Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Ishvaro Yadmeti Murti Deha Vibhakine Vyoma Adhyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtiya Namaha Sarva Vedanta Siddhanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramanandam Sadgurum Pranatosnaham. Part 2 of 7 stages to liberation. All this means is the 7 stages that any human being from any background, from any creed, from any lifestyle, from any attempt to try to bring this all together so it makes sense that they go through. So what this really means is, what stages do we undergo from the stage of not being interested at all in anything other than materialism, all the way to the stage where there is no disagreements or contradictions between this and that. So what liberation really means is that one cannot find a distinction between one thing or another, because they see consistently that there is the sameness that is shared in all creation. And the vision of a jnani thus is one whose vision is locked onto the sameness rather than to the apparent difference. And even the apparent differences are known to be just self alone, because they're appearing in you alone. Last fortnight we have done 3 stages and 4 stages, and I will revise them very quickly, and then we'll continue on to the 7 stages in total. So before we do, look at this as a checklist. So what this really means is that you can look at your own journey, whereby how you go through, this discovery, and you can just sort of see where I am and what I need to work on, what I need to drop, what I no longer need to participate with. So it saves you a lot of time. Okay? So let's start. Alright, so the first stage we talked about, I'm going to use mind maps, and then when we get to stage 4 onwards, I'll continue the text. We said is a stage of ignorance and ajnana, which means not knowing, no knowledge of what? No knowledge of that knowledge which once known, no more knowledge would have to be known, because all knowledge is known. And what kind of knowledge is that? That knowledge which is the essence, the truth of all knowledge. So ajnana really means that I am, as a person, partialized according to the interests that the person has. So if they have interest in, let's say, engineering, then their entire world is about just engineering. Which means that as soon as you go outside engineering, then there is nothing to know over there. In fact, I don't need to know anything outside my particular field of engineering. So this is the stage of ajnana. But when we turn it into the aspect of knowledge, self-knowledge, atma, jnanam, then basically it's the stage where there's no motivation to seek. The reason is because there's an unconscious incompetence. That means I don't know anything else other than what I know. And what I know is not a lot. And that's fine. But because I don't know anything other than that, the instigation or the flame of spark of seeing if there's anything else, that doesn't even arise, because that's all I'm at. That's my field, and as soon as you go outside my field, then what happens? Then anything outside the boundaries gets sucked into the boundaries of my area. So if, for example, you attempt to argue let's say a religious fanatic, they're doing the best they can, at least, and you try to say something to expand their mind, because the school that they're interested in is, for example, imagine it's a circle, and the school
only has, for example, A, B, and C. So all of the knowledge can only reflect what A, B, and C has. But as soon as you come from a different field of school, which has not only A, B, C, but also has D, E, F. So as soon as you talk about D, E, F, then because this does not contain D, E, F, then the D, E, F will be converted into A, B, C. So in other words, the knowledge will not be ascertained. So the first stage is really exactly this model. All knowledge that you attempt to say will be subsumed or categorically put underneath A, B, C. Which is why they say, which is why there is no, why they're indifferent to truth, for example. Or they believe that myself is the body, mind, intellect. Why? Because all that the intellect has about itself is A, B, and C. And where does the ABC come from? It comes from lifetime of vasanas, lifetime of accumulative tendencies, how to think about myself. So when the next birth occurs, then all of these vasanas flood your mind, and what happens? The I still continues to think like it was thinking for lifetimes, because that's how it's used to. So I'm interested in scriptures, even though the scriptures is the only pramana, which means the means of knowledge for knowing yourself. So this means that the ignorance persists, because that's the only way one can know themselves, is through the proper means of knowledge called pramana. And if that is rejected, if I reject this, then whatever I know will continue being the case. I can never know more. So what do we do about this? We just need to wait it out. There's not much you can do about it, because it's lifetimes of conditioning in stage one. So take a moment and just, if you can, reflect, at one point how we were all, perhaps maybe that wasn't you, I don't know, at the stage of ignorance. Somebody told you about God, and we were sort of allergic to the name God. Oh God, I don't need that stuff. It's too goofy. Give me science, give me data, give me statistics, give me proof. So for example, you go to a spiritual event and you're talking about yourself as a body, from the body, mind, intellect level. But someone who knows the DEF, they're trying to show you there's something more. And what happens is we misinterpret their advice according to ABC. So we think we heard their advice, but actually we heard it according to our own biases, our own prejudices. You understand that experience? We all have it, yeah. We all have had it at some point. Where is C? That's obvious. So show me, give me the proof. I need to see it. And that's impossible because we cannot see the formless. So any questions about ignorance so far before we move to stage 2?
Yeah, that can be hard because if I'm a Christian, anything you say is devil, Satan.
Yeah.
So I won't believe anything you say.
Yeah.
I don't believe in Christ.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I know they're very intimately that kind of situation. And there's not much you can do. The only thing that I discover is you can just sort of agree on the aspect of what they believe. Right? So yeah, thank you for, I'm inspired by your pursuit of Christianity. I'm inspired by your pursuit of salvation and Jesus and all of these things that you're like, thank you. You really inspire me. Just leave it at that. Right? As soon as you go into or have you considered that you cannot limit God to heaven itself because you're putting space and time to God? Instantly you're going to get 5 pages of resistance. I've had to see that over and over again. And through time you just figure out there's no way you can get through this. You're just wasting your time. So what do? We just be inspired by them, right? You relate to the part that you relate with, but leave everything else out.
But even that, we have the DEF knowledge.
Yeah.
And we are saying that whatever the person is talking about Christianity as ABC knowledge, even our DEF might not be all of it, So we are actually placing it on what we know, on their thoughts.
So infinitely, it goes so there's always another circle, right? And everyone has like, X, Y, Z. And then even after X, Y, Z, there's actually nothing, and that's called the self. So what we're actually talking about, we're always speaking from the self. And because Advaita Vedanta covers all the way from the self and goes top down, X, Y, Z, then whichever way you look at this, you see what they're talking about. You see what they're talking from ABC aspect, from DEF aspect, from LMN aspect, until you can no longer reduce any kind of knowledge, because you ultimately realize that all of this knowledge is known to you, known to the self.
No, so what is the answer? There are other, syllable.
I just said it. Until you keep going. In the relative world, there's always going to be X, Y. Now you got X1, Y1, Z1. And then you got, XX1, XX2. So it goes infinitely. So you can never win the game in the relative world, in Mithya. Because whichever way you look at it from, there's always another answer. For example, if I have a 6 here, and then from my point of view it's a 6, from your point of view it's a 9. So from whichever way you look at it, there's just no winning the game. That's why I said you never argue. You just understand where they're coming from, because you don't need to argue. Why? Because you understand that the knowledge which you know, which you are here, and all the entire world is in here, is the knowledge which cannot be negated. You can't negate awareness, because they also have to be aware to be speaking about their thoughts also, which come from the subtle body, coming from the vasanas, coming from lifetimes of collection of all of the education. Clear?
Yep.
I still want this marker to work. Okay. So, stage 2, denial, veiling. Okay, so now in stage 1, we were completely uninterested. Hey, Adrian, is it okay if I I know I did this last week, last fortnight. Are you okay with this?
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's good. There's a few people that weren't here last week.
Okay.
A lot of people that weren't here last week, actually.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah,
Okay.
perfect.
So, denial or veiling, avaranam. Now, no longer do they say God doesn't exist, show me. Now they will say, well, I heard about Ishvara, but Ishvara cannot be known. And I realize that I don't know what Ishvara is. I now know about Ishvara, but I realize that I don't know much about Ishvara. I know about, because I've heard of Ishvara, but I actually know nothing about Ishvara. In other words, now they've discovered what they don't know. A conscious incompetence. In other words, consciously I know that I'm incompetent at something. So, expressed ignorance. I know that I don't know. And the qualities of these individuals will be, when the person says I, they will say that person is the body, mind, intellect. And there is no doubt about that. That's absolute truth. They will also say you can't experience the truth, or if you can experience, or if it is out there, then they will try to experience it. This is a common mistake in the spiritual world. Trying to experience the formless, which means, again, the mistake has been made. I'm limiting it to time and space. So then they will go through different practices, different techniques. So these kinds of people will love techniques, because they will believe that if I get a technique, I will go to a different dimension. And that dimension that I am offered, or that I am promised, is the true reality. So they will constantly keep looking for more realities, for more transcendental experiences. Okay, now, also, if suppose you have an experience, and then it's an amazing experience, and then you say, I got it. You know why I got it? Because that experience that I was in was so much more real than this one. Very common. And that experience has all the answers. In that place, I was limitless. In that place, I was free. Here, I'm not free. There, I was free. And then, what happens? That place gets now mistaken as the new reference, taken as the new reference point. So that means when the person comes back here to Earth, which they will, obviously, what begins is going to end, then everything on Earth gets compared in reference points to that experience. So now the whole life becomes about chasing the highest peak of happiness that I have had at some retreat or some meditation. So life now becomes about trying to re-experience what I have experienced. And then the person will also say, because I have been to that place, I have gained enlightenment. In other words, it's a status. It's something I can now write on my resume. I've been in this place, and therefore I am worthy because I have been in this place, but you haven't been in this place. Therefore, I am enlightened and you're unenlightened. So this is all stage 2 speaking. But what we know from Vedantic standpoint, of course, is that the I never moved. I was always present before and after and during the experience. So what's happening is they're once again dumping the... they're making satyam, they're making mithya, that is the body, mind, intellect, into satyam. That's what's happening. They're making what is impermanent the permanent. The mistake. That's why it says self equals reflected awareness, which is Atman, but they're making Atman into the body, mind, intellect. Okay. Okay, they will read their way to liberation, like a lot. I can do this by myself. I don't need your help. Today's times are different. We're no longer living in the caves. We've got Google. Just Google it and you'll find the answers. This is the stage 2 types. The independence, where the ego, the ahamkara, is still trying to regain. Is it on there? It's not on there. It is.
Yeah.
It's trying to regain control that is independent and it doesn't need any help from anyone. Okay, and what do we prescribe for these types? Karma yoga. Why? Because I just said ego is independent, trying to regain control of itself. And what does karma yoga do? It dissolves the ego that it is not in control. It is only operating under the guidance and the environment's needs. So this means that the ego no longer has this ownership, but it rather offers itself to the needs of the environment. In other words, it dissolves the very ego, the ahamkara, which is causing this mistake of I am enlightened and you are not. Once again, the ego is enlightened and you are not. Okay, the questions about stage 2, denial and veiling. So we go from ignorance, I don't know, therefore no questions come up at all, no interest. Now, a little bit of reading, a little bit of hearing here and there. Now, okay, God, sounds like a great person. It seems like I can just pray to this person and get what I want. And then a lot of false ideas get developed about Ishvara. So Ishvara becomes a business person that you transact with, basically. Any questions?
That's good. Ishvara is beyond knowledge, isn't it? Ishvara is beyond knowledge.
Yeah, beyond knowledge and also is knowledge itself. Expressed in what you see right now. For example, just the fact that you said that to me is also knowledge. And, you have to know English language to say that. So, and where does that come from? From Ishvara. Okay, now let's go to stage number 3, which is projection, notions, or dikshepa. What did it say there? So here's about the self. So from stage 1, they didn't know anything. They were not interested. Stage 2, they just heard Ishvara. That was all that they needed to do. Now, from stage 2 through time, they begin to read more books, get more education, and then realize how much they don't know. Did you ever get into a topic, and then the more you explore the topic, you go, I don't know anything about this. So it's like opening up a can of worms. So the more I look, the more I discover how much I don't know. So they get very discouraged. However, before they get discouraged, of course, see they struggle. They develop notions and fantasies about, this is just a symbol of Ishvara that I use. Even though this is an incorrect symbol, because this is a symbol for yin and yang yang is the final product of duality. The symbol of Ishvara should be like a vortex. Right? So it's, we just take it as Ishvara, because it's more comprehensible. So they develop notions and fantasies about what happens if I pray, or what happens if I do a certain ritual, and what it's like to be in heaven, and how I can score going to heaven if I do certain things. So they live basically in this fantasy world because of the massive amounts of unqualifications in the mind. So the mind at this point still has a lot of tamas and rajas, and because of that it's not able to comprehend the subtlety of Ishvara. It doesn't have a lot of sattva yet. Remember, stage 2 is still rajas. So this is rajas dependent. So at stage 1 and 2, this is all tamas, ignorance and veiling. And at stage 2, rajas comes in. So this is why I say to get rid of veiling, you do a little bit of karma yoga. And karma yoga converts this very lethargic, tired, dull mind into a little bit more quicker, sharper mind. And that's when rajas comes in. But rajas, remember, is a projecting power. This is why in a relationship, if the two partners have a lot of rajas, they will constantly project onto each other. And what's going to happen is they're not going to be able to see that their projection is actually their projection. It's the reality, right? So that's the problem with the rajas. It's excess. Like, it's your fault and it's not my fault kind of thing. That kind of projection. Okay, go back to stage 3.
When you say do karma yoga, you're expressing activity. What's the action that you would do for karma? In other words, just being aware of the actions that you're taking. Is that what you're saying when you're saying do karma yoga?
Surrender that you want any results. Like, I don't want any results from what I'm doing. I'm just doing this because I understand that the air that I'm breathing, I'm actually using that air, so I cannot claim any ownership. Any success that I claim actually depends on so many variables, starting with the air. I need to breathe first of all. So it's just really understanding that the legs and the arms and the mind that you're using actually depends on food, depends on the environment, and also the success that you get depends on other people. So actually nothing that you do or any success that you claim actually is dependent on the environment entirely. So how can I just claim any ownership for myself? So karma yoga is just surrendering this grabbing this, it's my success, and just letting it go and understanding it cannot be my success because I'm so dependent upon you, the environment. So it dissolves the ego.
So taking the action but not claiming the results.
Yeah. But this doesn't work out.
You get toothpaste.
Huh?
Toothpaste will work.
Toothpaste?
And you can brush your teeth.
Toothpaste,
Yeah. No.
You don't dish it off?
No, toothpaste on your tongue.
Take a tissue
Toothpaste
maybe
will
and
clean
put a bit of water.
I'll probably just draw it here, right? Okay. So they think I am a doer at this point. Obviously, it's still because the ego is still holding tight, and they're struggling to experience the self. So this basically means that because they have so many false notions, these false notions are fueling the person to try to attain or feel. This program is called "Feel the Presence of God." That's stage 3 basically. Of course, there's exceptions, but trying to feel the formless, and whatever you feel is really just your own emotion contained in the subtle body. So it's just a very subtle emotion. And what happens? They fail over and over. Why? Because as I said, the mind is still not qualified. It's still very gross. So that when we grow up, we usually associate with gross objects, and that our mind's very used to only seeing grossness, right? That's all I can see. But anything beyond that surface of the grossness, that's not for me. That's what we call, a person's surface. They're surface-based. They can only see what's on the surface. And what the person doesn't understand is they fail because the important part that we have to know is you're never not experiencing yourself. Who's not experiencing themselves right now? I'll give you $1 million. Anyone not experiencing yourself right now? Okay, let's get a skeptical person, and let's suppose someone says, I'm not experiencing myself. So we can take this from different angles. We can say, for example, okay, so obviously the fact that you brought that up, you expect that you remove the word your, that the self is supposed to have a different experience than the one that you're already having right now. Right? You follow me? So if a person says, I'm not experiencing myself, all they're really saying is silently, because the self is something other than what I'm experiencing. That's why they have notions. See how he's thinking about false notions? So what in Vedanta we say you were never not experiencing yourself. And the problem why this can go on for such a long time of seeking this liberation is because we are always looking for something other than what we're experiencing right now, which is yourself. We want the self to be some amazing, transcendental, blissful, delightful experience that never ends, and it's so much beyond everyone, and we're suddenly glowing, we have this halo around our heads, and everyone recognizes it, and everyone goes up to us and says, wow, you're glowing. Right? So we have these constant images in our head, and we're living from these images instead of from reality of the now. So all we have to do is just own up, which I've been saying in the Gita class, own up that what you're experiencing now is what the self is. This is what people are looking for. That's why we say you're only looking for yourself. But people have heard this before, right? So why are they still looking? Because they're failing to accept and do not realize that that's all there is to it. Yourself, your experience of yourself is not different than the experience from myself. The program, the software in the head, in the mind, of course is different, no doubt. Because, born in a different environment, different culture, that's different. But your general self, your self-aware existence, that is exactly the same. So it means you already have exactly what you're looking for, and that's all there is to moksha, basically. So we usually make this big business out of moksha and think it's some, impossible to gain experience, and only Buddha or Christ can get it, right? And then we just put these, see how I'm talking from the mind, these notions? I'm actually being this person, constantly living in a projected notion. What is projection? Rajas. What does Rajas do? Causes the mind to live in a fantasy world and never accept that this world is actually it and the fantasy world is not it, where their vision is reversed. The fantasy world is it and this world is not it. Why? Because the nature of the mind always amplifies the experience and makes it 100 times greater. So obviously the mind is going to fall for what it can imagine, and therefore it wants to live in that experience. So this is why it's not a big deal. This is it. This is all there is to it.
It's like the secret of the Holy Grail, isn't it? Where the guy finds this book and he opens it. It's a mirror, empty book. But inside it's a mirror and reflection of his own face. And exactly what you're saying. Oh, he's searching everywhere for this particular knowledge of God or whatever. Holy Grail.
Yeah, it's a movie.
Yeah, it's a movie too. It's a book and a movie.
Holy Grail.
No, something anyway. I can't remember. A long time ago.
You're talking about the Monty Python movie.
You remember? Yeah.
The Monty Python.
Yeah, I know the movie.
No, I didn't
When
remember
he
that. It was
opens
Monty
the thing,
Python.
it's an
Essentially,
empty
the Holy
book,
Grail.
carved up, but there's a mirror in there, and he sees his own face.
I would like to see these movies.
Yeah, I'll find out what
I
it is.
only
I don't know
watch
what it's
people
called.
recommend. Okay. So projection and notions. So this person basically is living in a lot of projection. And as I said, it's also hard to get to them. But at least they're a little bit more open now. But still, whatever you say will be misinterpreted according to their ABC, as I have on the board there.
And is that the stage where the ego grabs onto the idea of being a higher, better person and having a perfection ideology that they're trying to aim to, but it keeps moving?
Yes, that's a good point. It is indeed, because so anything that, for example, a Shastra would say would be now subsumed or categorized according to their idea. So if the Shastra does not describe something as good as that notion, then the Shastra is not going to have a chance to get to this person. Right? So, or also, because see, at stage 3 they at least have some curiosity. So it's all falsehood and truth all mixed together. But basically what's operating is still large quantities of falsehood because of these rajasic projections. Yeah. And they don't give the chance for the person to consider alternative views. Okay. Now, stage 4, indirect knowledge. Paroksha jnanam. Okay. So this person will say, okay, I have heard about the self, I have undergone certain texts, and I've heard very well, I've been taught very, very well what the self is. So now they have an absolutely excellent conceptual idea of what the self is, what Atman is, what Ishvara is. Okay, and I know it exists. However, because it is still an intellectual idea, they're not living it, and it's clear. And because they're not living it, they would say, the conclusion would be, well, because I've heard all there is to hear, but I'm not living it, therefore, it is not, either it's not my time, or I'm not, I'm not special enough to experience it. Therefore, it is only reserved for the great masters of our time. So, at this stage, they will still, for example, revere different sages. They will still, have an altar, and it's a strong duality, and they're still asking for help so that they may live this knowledge, because it all still remains at a very intellectual level. These are the scholar types. One time in Chiang Mai, I met a great friend who, at the beginning was very smart, and I was like, this guy's amazing. And he told me so many things, but when I just started, the conversation of awareness started coming, I just explained, you are this, your awareness. I was like, huh? And it was very confusing for me, because the gentleman was very, very smart, but when I started speaking about the most basic, your awareness that cannot ever be touched, and the knowledge, whatever is known by this awareness, it's like, oh, okay, wow. Like there was just no connection there. Mm. So this is the kind of stage 4 we're talking about. Everything is still at a, it's like comparing religion. Let's see what Buddhism says, let's see what Christianity, let's see how it all fits in. And they're very, very smart, way smarter than I am, or all of us put together, because their job is to know. But it is not actually living it. It is just like your times table, 9 times 5 equals 45, 2 times 2 equals 4, right? So you can just recall anything easily. But there's no substance to it. Okay. Oh, most spiritual seekers are there. Including teachers, and the reason is because they're still saying you need a technique to experience yourself. So they will give you a yoga technique, alternative nostril breathing, or some kind of a, Kriya yoga. I'm not talking about Karma yoga, technique to breathe up and down the spine, or something that will send you to this place. This is also strong yoga world, with the chakras. Upanishads does not mention chakras at all. So this is a completely different school. Okay.
Is it because we attach our body so much?
They're attached to still their sharira, sukshma sharira, and the gross body and the subtle body. So this means that anything that the only reality is if I feel good, I'm close. Because what feels good? Your body feels good. And the better the body feels, the more it seems like I am escalating. I am going up the ladder of my spiritual journey. And what do techniques do? The entire Karmakanda section of the Vedas prescribes different techniques to get into incredible states. So the higher state I get into, the more I seem like I'm moving up the ladder. But I'm not interested in knowledge. Because who needs knowledge? Who needs to just give me a technique and you'll experience, you'll go. You see what the psychology is? Give me a technique and I will go somewhere instantly. I don't need to read books. I don't need to read any of this. Just give me a technique that will send me, that will give me a ladder to climb to this place called liberation or whatever they imagined. So it's still this duality. In other words, there's still a split between who I am and what I want. Are we familiar with this stage? It's all concepts. I know this stage like yesterday. It was so clear. In fact, I know my teacher, which was a Buddhist teacher, and I was in yoga worlds so heavily, just doing every single technique you give me. I was doing for 16 hours a day. And then I just tell him, no, leave this knowledge business alone. You're just constantly reading these books. Just do a technique and you will feel awesome. And I'll tell you, you do feel awesome because these techniques that are offered, that are available, they send you to these transcendental states. You just walk around like the most blissful person in the world and people think you're enlightened. Because wow, he or she is somewhere, right? They're in some kind of a state. And you believe that too, because you are. But it's a relative state. And I could never understand why do you keep dismissing everything I say to you? You just sort of you just tell me the same thing. Just who is this person that knows? Who is this person that knows about this, Andre? It's like I heard this before 100 times before, but so that was the block. That was because I didn't want knowledge. Basically, just give me a technique and I'll go there.
Is this where you're sort of entering into the bliss kosha?
You do because you. Well, the bliss kosha is through meditation, but bliss kosha is also responsible for your general happiness throughout the day, right? But also nirvikalpa samadhi, for example, staying there for as long as possible, so you don't want to go anywhere else because there's no duality. It's just this self, and so it sort of makes everything else in comparison very dark. Actually, I know some sadhus who, if you ask them, so how was your nirvikalpa samadhi? The most common theme is, I felt depressed when I came back, right? Because in contrast to this unity, not knowing the difference between you and me and this earth, it's like I want to go back, right? So that experience continues.
Can that be delusion as well? You can be deluded, you're in samadhi, but you're not actually.
Well, it's more like you've entered the bliss kosha and believing it's the self, and you've hit a wall because you.
Okay, we have to talk about sattva, a sattvic mind. The more sattvic mind is, the more it reflects pure consciousness. Mm-hmm. So this stage, because they know so much, that's why it's indirect knowledge. Obviously, they're in knowledge enough. But they stopped at a certain level. Because remember I said they're not interested in knowledge, but now I'm saying indirect knowledge. So they only got enough, but that's still a lot, to know that all I need to do is to go to some place. Right? So the self is still an object. Okay, what do we have here? Okay, doesn't matter. Okay, stage. So I'm going to read now because we're now resuming from last week. Go to all this.
Andre, can I just ask, stage 4, indirect knowledge, is there still Raja Guna in that one?
It's the sattva is starting to come in more. Now Raja, so tamas is Raja is dominant still. But there is a lot more sattva than tamas, stage 4. Okay. In stage 3 there was a lot more rajas and a lot less tamas than in stage 1. or 2. So again, I'll put that again. Stage 1, a lot of tamas. Stage 2, a lot of tamas, a little bit of rajas. Stage 3, a little bit less tamas, a lot of rajas, right? At least now they're moving, they're active. A little bit of sattva. Stage 4, less tamas, less rajas, a little bit more sattva. Okay, indirect knowledge. The individual hears about Vedanta, becomes curious about it, and develops some faith in it. He learns that the self exists, but often believes that it is an inconceivable object only attained by great masters. But he or she persists. Okay, now stage 5. Direct knowledge. Aparoksha jnanam. He or she realizes that he or she cannot experience the self as an object. Stop. Cannot experience the self as an object. What happened in stage 4?
You mistakenly experience the self as an object.
Yeah, so stage 4, I can experience the self as an object. That's why, as Martin said, they're trying to attain the Anandamaya Kosha. They're trying to feel happy. But stage 5, I can't experience it. Why? Because he or she is always experiencing it as a conscious subject. Now, I'm going to read this. Most stop their journey at stage 5. Most stop here. 99% of spiritual seekers stop at stage 5. Why? Because at stage 5, that's all there is. Right? What more can you know that, hey, I'm the conscious subject. Without the subject, there is no object. This is it. Right? So the world depends on me. Without me, there is no world. What's more there is to? Now let's go back and get married and have fun and then, die nicely and never come back. Right? So, mistake. They are still at this stage identified with or giving reality to the BMI. In other words, it goes like this. I know I am not the doer, but hey, so what? Doesn't matter, I'm still going to attend to my needs. In other words, I know I am the self, but I'm still going to cater to my needs as a jiva. This is called 95% of your foot is in the self, and maybe one pink, the small toe, is in the world. In other words, it's still an unconscious giving importance to the world. I know all of this. I've heard, it's very advanced stage, by the way, stage 5. I know that I am the self, that I'm immortal, that I am Atman, whose nature is Brahman, and that the thoughts are all known to me, and no thought really matters because I don't control the thoughts. They're all just coming down from these vasanas, which I didn't create in the first place. I know all that. And I'm free, right? There's no problem. I've done it. However, when they're in the world, they still feel there's certain things that are important. I still need to have security. I still need to have money. I still need to have a little bit of my cake on the side. I still need to have luxuries and good food. I still need to have a little bit of friends here and there. See what's happening? I'm giving reality to a mere dream. I'm giving reality to the world. In other words, I'm still depending on the world for my enjoyment. This is stage 5. And most stop there, and then the justification happens. So what? I can. Right? I can. What's the problem here, Andre? I can have a little bit of worldly stuff. What's wrong? It's all Ishvara. See how the justification comes in? But it's all in the name of what? It's all attending to this need of these vasanas. In other words, I'm still identified with my own conditioning. Not moksha yet.
But I'm a bit confused with this. But when you're given a body,
Yeah.
you need to do the basic looking after, isn't it? I mean, you don't have to overdo
Yeah, you will look. You will look. It's just that you're not going to have to.
So that's a need, because you need to look after the body.
Yeah.
because it's given to you to come into this world and,
Yeah, I agree
get
so far.
rid of. So that looking after, that basic looking after is also what you're just saying.
Yeah, okay, two differences. Imagine, see, we're all looking after each other, normal. But suppose then I go to the mirror and then I go, oh, I need to look good for the society to approve of me. That's what I'm talking about. Catering to the needs of the jiva. Eating for the sake of eating is normal. So you need to know the difference here. But eating so that I can be strong, so that the ladies will look at me, so that, that I will have this, some kind of, benefit that others will pick up. That's catering. That's what I'm talking about. Is that clear? So don't now think,
purpose.
So don't now think, because I know in stage 5 we're going to think, this is me. Don't now think just because you're attending to the world that you feel like you need to work, you need to attend to your wife and husband, that, I'm in stage 5. It doesn't mean that. See, that's just swadharma. You're doing your duty. But what I mean is, I need to be happy here. I need to be happy. Who's the one who needs to be happy? Awareness is totally free. Who needs to be happy? The mind needs to be happy. The jiva needs to be happy. This is what I mean by catering to the needs of the jiva. What else is there? So I know the door is not real, but let the door do. Okay. Mistake. And this is also a good point. There is only the self. That's the reality. There's only you as consciousness. So to say there is a self and a door, then that is still not full. Because if I say I need to do for my happiness, what is the ahamkara? Remember? It is a door. Now, why is a door do? To enjoy. There's no other reason. In other words, the door, as long as there's someone who wants to enjoy something, why? Because it gives them pleasure, it makes their life worth living, it makes them full, it makes them complete, then as long as that's true, I would then take advantage of that. That's what I mean by stage 5. And this person might as well know everything about Vedanta, be an expert in giving lectures, but still there's this, I need something from the world because nobody is paying attention to me. Huh? What about me? I need to be loved. I need my needs. That's what I'm talking about, stage 5. The jiva still is a partial reality for this person. And this person will even say, yeah, I know that I need to feel love, but actually this is all just jiva stuff. But it's okay, I'm going to feed the jiva. The jiva also deserves a little bit of love. You see how the justification kicks in? It's still the I is associated with the self and the jiva simultaneously.
So it's attachment to either do action to avoid suffering or to gain pleasure, which then feeds into fear and greed.
Yes.
It's a question of doing one's duty and the things that you are born to be doing, the tasks that are assigned to you in this world.
Yeah.
Forming those is fine, but when you start to identify with your own ego, doing things that identify with your ego is the issue.
Very well put, yeah. So swadharma, your duty is perfectly fine. But when I make more of it for my own enjoyment, for example, you're a mom and then you go, oh my God, I've been taking care of my kid for so long. When am I going to get some love? Just the kid keeps taking everything but doesn't ever hug me or something. So that means there's still a jiva there. Hey, if it's dark there, maybe we'll just turn on the light. Olga, right behind you, there's a light section.
Andre, just a question about that. When you're doing your duty, what about if you actually enjoy the duty? It gives you, a good feeling.
Yeah.
What do we do about that? I understand if you're attached to that, there's the danger of, I want to do that again, but, there's obviously nothing wrong with doing your duty and
because you're going to do one duty or another, and as long as the body is alive, it will associate emotions to it. But if I suddenly start going, I love my swadharma so much, my duty so much, that I can't live without it, right? Then, stage 5. Suppose someone stripped away your swadharma right now, and you love what you do so much that you can't even imagine living without it. You would still live, but your life wouldn't be as full. You would, you have like, right? Stage 5. So how do we know, what's this test for stage 5? right now, think of something that you love. Take it away. Or suppose that if you do it, then you will die on the spot. So you're not allowed to do it. If you're still okay with that, then you're not in stage 5. If you're not okay with that, then you're still alternating between stage 5 and maybe the previous stage or the next stage.
Should we be testing ourselves to see if we can live without it? Or is that...
Well, I did.
Yeah,
I did. I love cooking.
Yeah.
I was on the cruise. I didn't have to cook. I was in bliss.
How okay?
It's a duty. No,
Andre,
I love cooking.
how okay? You say you'd be okay without it.
Yeah.
Do you mean like not a care in the world?
Yeah, the reason you would say that is because, you see, the self is already complete.
Yeah.
So this means that nothing can add onto me nor subtract from me. It doesn't affect me. So this means, however the body is, whether the jiva is getting what it wants or it's not getting what it wants, because I'm not the jiva, it doesn't really matter. It's like somebody else not getting what they want. You don't care. It doesn't affect you. So in the same way, you're not the body that you're carrying. So this means whether it's being suffocated or not, obviously, you're going to step in and do something. But if it keeps bothering you constantly, then obviously there's this subtle association with the jiva. Yeah. So how okay? As long as, there's a difference between taking care of your survival needs. Okay, that's fine. It's, like you said, swadharma. That has to be done. Because if you don't do that, there's definitely suffering, and nobody likes to suffer as a person. However, if there is, as I said, if they're not okay, because somebody else took their swadharma and can do it much better, I suppose you're doing something and someone comes in, an employee, and they do your job 10 times better, and suddenly you come out of your position, and you're not assigned that position, and then you go, oh my God, I don't feel happy anymore. I'm toast, and I'm not satisfied with this work. Then there's an association with this jiva, stage 5. Yeah. What else can we say here? Okay, so stage 5 negates the idea that the self doesn't exist. This was already present in stage 1. So this is completely negated. Or it also negates the idea that the self has to be experienced. And it also negates the idea that I am a person. In other words, it negates the idea that I am these 3 bodies, these 3 shariras. Because you've come to class, you've learned tons about this knowledge, so you know, I am not the body, that's it. So they now know they're not the person. And it also negates the sense of doership, that I need to do something for my happiness, even though that one is not completely negated yet. Yeah, but it negates it at least 99.9%, let's put it that way. Okay, so we read number 5. Direct knowledge, that's aparoksha jnana. Very high stage, most stop here. That's what we need to know. Okay, I'm not going to read the example. Most stop journey here, but still subtly identify with the jiva. Example, I'm totally convinced that I am the self, that I'm not this body, mind, these thoughts, because of all the knowledge I received, which means that I cannot be the waker, the dreamer, or the deep sleeper. I have to be that principle which is the one who is aware of these 3 states. The principle called turiya, which just means conscious principle. And this makes sense, hence I can successfully, confidently now claim my identity as the self. You see how we're speaking? Like we're speaking, the highest of the highest right here, stage 5. But still, unknowingly or knowingly, usually it's unknowingly or unconsciously, such a person gives reality to this ahamkara, to this doer who does in order to enjoy. So that's stage 5.
But you can still do actions which will create a conducive environment for good living.
Absolutely, yeah. Because that's also your swadharma. It's a duty. Because usually you're not the only one who's doing it. There's also others who are associated with you, right? So your life good equals those who are involved, life also good.
Because going the opposite to this is where you're neglecting things or actually doing things which would potentially destroying things. It's the opposite to actually doing things which would please you.
Yeah, so stage 5 relating to what you're saying would be, I'm going to build a very nice place so that the people who walk in are going to be impressed. And they're going to think I'm a good person, a very neat person, a very intelligent person, a very XYZ
It's
person.
a perfect person.
Yeah, a perfect person. How hard I work. I want to make sure that you know, my mom, my dad, my siblings see that. I want to make sure that everyone's proud of me. Right? It may not be as strong, but it's still there very subtly. Okay. The question, stage 5. Stage 6. Okay, freedom from limitation. So after having gone through stage 5 and through your nididhyasana, through your constant abidance in the self, and recognizing consciously that why am I still giving these importances to my needs? Because my needs are always taken care of by what? By Ishvara. It means what? If I'm still attending, I'm talking about stage 5, if I'm still attending to my needs, it means what? I do not trust Ishvara fully. I have not fully surrendered to that principle which has been taking care of me from day one of being born on earth. That means still I don't trust Ishvara. I have partial trust. Okay, so now moksha, stage 6. Freedom from limitation. Okay, the first, we're going to start with a qualifier. You can waste all the time in the world, do nothing, not have any interesting lifestyle at all, be in an environment that you usually would not want to be in, and it makes no difference. Why? Because to whom does it make a difference? To the person, but not to you. So the qualifier is, usually we want to be efficient and effective in our life, and we want to make sure that we get everything done and everything works out well. But this kind of jnani, they don't have to get things done well. Why? Because they're already being taken care of. One understands that the needs are already being taken care of by the whole. That means such an intellect has fully surrendered to Ishvara. In other words, who's still doing the planning? You see, the ego wants to do the planning, usually, according to what? To its own ideas of what I need to do to make sure everything works out well. But the jnani doesn't do that, even though they still plan for practical reasons. They let go of the planning. Why? Because the planning has always been going on automatically, whether you knew about it or not. For example, did you plan for your milk teeth to fall out?
No.
Who took care of that?
Nature.
Yeah, anyone other than you. Yeah, did you plan for puberty to start growing and developing and voice to start changing? Did you plan that? Did you deliberately sketch that out in your life plan? Not at all. If you think about it, all of the important points, all the events in life were not planned by you. They came of their own accord. And the reason why you're here is because of those spontaneous events that just occurred. Somehow. It happened somehow. I don't know how. But somehow it did. So that intelligence, the jnani surrenders to. In other words, they don't need to plan or worry about planning. What cessation of suffering means is... Okay, well, it actually matches the first one. Is we worry for ourselves, our family, for the tomorrow, the past, regrets. I could have done better. I could do much better tomorrow. I'm going to improve myself today. Who's improving who? If I want to improve myself for the betterment of, for being better in front of your eyes, that means what? Stage 5. The knowledge is there, but if I only improve the Andre character, or whoever character happens to be, then the response will be much better. You see how there's an attendance to the jiva? That's stage 5. Stage 6, that means there's no care. Because why? You're surrendered, you're totally trusting the field to take care of your needs. And if it's for the highest and greatest good of everyone, it will be so whether you like it or not. So there's a trust factor going on. And because of this trust factor, there is no space for past, present, and future concern, especially in the present. Right? So, for example, before it would be, yeah, I know I'm the self, stage 5, and everything's fine, but how am I going to pay the bills? Common one, right? In the Gita, verse 9, it's not coming to me now. It's going to say that Krishna says, just take care of, just worship me alone. In other words, abide in yourself, and I will take care of all your needs. But the reason we don't experience this is because we hardly ever surrender to the field. We always keep one foot control, just in case Australia, the economy goes down, or a bust happens, or some accidents. It's realistic planning. I'm being realistic. What is that? Still giving reality to the world. In other words, this kind of jnani does not do that, because there's a total trust. Just like, do you worry about whether the next breath is going to come in? Why? Because you have no choice but to trust that the next breath is going to come in. Do you worry about it, your heart is going to stop beating right now? You got no choice but to surrender that the intelligence which is beating your heart is doing it much better than you can ever do with all the planning in the world. That's what a jnani is. Okay. Seeking stops completely because, as I said at the start of this, if you are already complete. So just imagine if all there is in the universe is water, H2O, that's all that exists, H2O. Then how can I add onto H2O when all I can add onto H2O is H2O? What have I really added onto H2O when I was already H2O? You see the logic? So this is what it means to say that one is already complete. They have nothing that can be added. A relationship won't make a difference. A divorce won't make a difference, even though it's going to make a big difference to the body-mind for certain. But it was not going to make the difference to you. And because of the completeness of the fulfillment and the fullness would be equatable to Ananda. And Ananda I do not mean by experiential bliss, I just mean that you're absolutely full. What does this mean? If someone even says to you, you're maybe you need to check into, if you know, maybe there's something more. I don't think you know everything. Just go see what Buddhism says, see what other books say. Right? Just make sure it doesn't bother you. Because nothing can bother what is already full. Because fullness does not exclude even disagreements. It does not exclude dualistic ideas trying to describe this fullness. So however you're described, it doesn't matter to you, because you also include the descriptions or the attempts trying to describe your fullness. Okay? Action is surrendered to Ishvara. Do as you wish with this body and intellect. That is very typical. You look at all the great jnanis in this, the great masters. They were very just sort of, just doing their duty. Like I like Gandhi. I always use Gandhi's example. Constantly on target. Always, moving towards what his swadharma is. Never tipped back or blown by all the resistance for the freedom of India. And they, one would say this, even though they wouldn't say it consciously, because to say, you do with me as you wish means what? That Ishvara is now separate from me. So this is just implying the spontaneous silent thinking. It's not implying the affirmation that the person is saying. And it is the highest accomplishment. There's nothing more to do after this kind of fulfillment. That nothing can touch you. For example, whether you die right now, like this second, or die in 1,000 years, it makes no difference. Whether however sick you are or not sick, it makes no difference. So inquire into it. Would it really make a difference if I had the worst disease, or like right now somebody told me I'm going to die right now? Do I honestly feel ready to die? Ask yourself that. If not, probably still stage 5. if can hardly wait to die, then it's probably, or just put it realistically, if you have you don't care whether there's death or not, it's just irrelevant whether the body lives or is reborn 1,000 times over and over again, that's stage 6. In other words, why? Who cares the body, mind, intellect, but I am not that, therefore it doesn't matter whether the body gets reborn or doesn't, it's got nothing to do with me. That's just Ishvara doing its, sending its little drones out to participate in the world.
So it's like the sadhus in India, they just walk around.
Just, yeah.
Food will come when it's coming.
Sometimes you don't really know what's going on in their head also, right? But I know some naked sadhus also. They just do not have any sense of the body.
No cold, no hot.
Yeah, that's extreme. That's yogi's extreme, right? So it's a good symbolic representation what it means to totally disconnect from the body, right? You just realize, my God, this is not my house. Who chose to come to Earth? Okay, would you be at some place, right? And you got options, and you go, okay, now I can choose. Very interesting, right? And you're looking at these worlds, and you go, I think I want to be on a world where I have to be born, first of all, be totally dependent, then I have to get my teeth drilled, I have to probably fight with my siblings, I have to be constantly hungry to survive, then I have to, be bullied in school, then I have to remember things, and then not only that, but I'm going to forget things, and then I have to go through this hormonal, interruption, being attracted to everyone, and then I have to be imposed by so many desires which I can never satisfy, which every time I do satisfy, then every time I'm going to just want another desire, and then I have to find how to survive. I have to then support my parents who have supported me, and I have to spend 20 years of my life supporting them, and then I have to support, give money to everyone, I have to find a house, and then I have to, work all my life to pay off the house, and then not only that, but then I get sick. And not only that, but when I get joy, which means I worked my whole life for joy, or let's say you work 20 days for joy, how long does that joy last? A very short time. Or let's suppose that even if you get, you want some fun, right? And then someone makes you like laugh so hard, and you go, stop it, right? So you spend 20 days looking for some fun. When someone made you happy, now you're telling them, stop it. In other words, even joy hurts, right? So I spent all this time chasing things one after the other, and even when I do get it, the joy factor compared to the factor of trying to get it it's just not a good deal at all. And on top of that, I only get to experience the attraction factor between 20 and 30, 40 maximum. And after that, you can't even make kids anymore. And then the age starts to, the wrinkles and everything starts to show. You start losing your hearing, your eyes, and then you get asthma. You can't even exercise anymore. Right? Then you go weak, and you can't even read the books anymore that you love. And your grandparents take all your time while you still want to pursue moksha, right? And then your spouse dies, and then you miss the love of your life. And now you're starting to cry. Now your life means nothing. And then you start to get sick. You can't do anything. Walking on the wheelchair, huh? Which idiot would decide to go on an earth like this? So in other words, you did not choose to be in a place like this. So this is what we mean by the highest purpose then has to be to just understand why you're here. To do your duty, do your job, go to stage 6, understand that none of this is mine. I'm just checking in a hotel. I'm going to check out in no time, in a couple of years, and then I'm never going to come back. Because who wants such a limited reality which doesn't really give you anything that's of substance? It lasts a short time, it's all ephemeral, and you have to maintain it once you get it. It's just totally not a good deal on earth. I'm just looking from an objective standpoint. You have to think like this, otherwise we keep going for things after things, right? One after the other. And this is what keeps building our lifetimes. Okay. So when this knowledge is gained and well assimilated, then it destroys the sanchita, which is a collection of all of the karmas which you have collected in all the lifetimes. And also the agami karma is destroyed. It's burned by this knowledge. What this basically means is what is meant to happen is not going to happen. Because you've now re-identified that none of this stuff is mine, actually. And also think about it this way. It has to be like this because, as I said, you did not choose to be here. So obviously, for it to be so hard, this doesn't make sense. Because all we really want is happiness. Now, what kind of a God would it be who makes it so hard for us to attain this? So obviously, this has to be destroyed so you can at least enjoy yourself, if you just look at it from a common sense factor. So prarabdha karma still continues, but the agami karma and sanchita is destroyed. So what this means is that because it's destroyed, there is no cause to give birth to the next body in the next lifetime. What sustains the sanchita karma? The fact that I'm a body, mind, intellect, and a body, mind, intellect always does to enjoy. That's who wants to leave Earth. Because if I do leave Earth, then hey, I've got so many more checklists to do, right? So you're offered very kindly another body by Ishvara to do that for the next lifetime. And where does those activities in the next lifetime come from? From your sanchita karma, and you get another round at it.
More fun.
I'm enjoying it.
Andre, just some clarification. If you're at stage 6, what if you have a job and that's your duty?
Yeah.
So you're a graphic designer.
Yeah.
Could you do another course to get your skills to serve better? Is that okay?
It doesn't make any difference.
Yeah.
Because stage 6 means you can do whatever you want. You just. I don't mean when I say don't care as in apathy. I just mean let the world receive the highest benefit that it needs to from this body.
Yeah.
But but there's no agenda trying to get a better position.
Of course.
Right. So as long as there's no agenda on your part, you can do whatever you want.
Okay.
You can be a butcher and do all the cutting and butchering, which is apparently himsa. But who's going to do that? Because a priest needs meat to eat in order to serve 10,000 people and uplift them. So obviously someone needs to serve the priest. So this means that you can do whatever you want.
But isn't it saying you can do whatever you want? That's perhaps misleading, at least to me. It sounds like
I get what you're saying.
like
it sounds like
I
it's
can
personal.
choose, whereas we're saying you don't choose. You just go with what the needs are.
There's opportunities and
Semantics.
inspirations become in
Yeah.
front of you, as long as you're applying your swadharma as you go.
I'll rephrase that. Whatever is to be done will be done,
Yeah.
whether you like it or not. And you're there just to facilitate that. You means the intellect.
And even if you do whatever you want, the consequences are there.
The consequences are there either way, right? Even if you do punya, Shankara says even punya
Punya
karma
karma
leads to papa also. So in other words,
Ends up as karma yoga.
so this stage really just means everything is fine, right? Everything's fine. Just let it be. This is not my home.
You're not to get obsessed with it.
Okay, it's like this. Suppose, when I say it's not my home, just imagine like this. You're in a dream and you suddenly realize that, you're dreaming, but you're not these characters and all this. You're actually the waker. So because there's still a certain course until the dream, because the night lasts 8 hours, suppose, and you go, okay, I'm just going to wait it out for an extra 7 hours until this night ends. So what are you going to do? You're probably going to do the best of it. Probably encourage some people here and there, these characters who are all believing that they're in this world, right? You're going to do the best that you can, get a good job, for serving other people. But it's okay. 7 more hours, I can hardly wait, right? So in other words, there's no concern because there's just like it's fine. It's a lovely Maya-generated reality. That's how which we will get into creation soon. But I'm not worried because it's not my creation. I didn't create this. Clear? If you didn't create something, why worry about it? If you did create it, absolutely save the world. But nobody created the world. So what's this idea of, what are you saving? You're saving just a dream. When you wake up, you realize all the effects, all the efforts you took to save these things. When you wake up, it just disappears as no meaning whatsoever. It just flies away. This is what I mean. How Maya sucks. It makes it so real that we get so invested and we think this is real. But just like waking up, instantly all this reality, my parents were never my parents. My friends, there was just me everywhere. That's the kind of the understanding I'm talking about. But before, we're just giving reality. This thing, but you're just giving reality to a mere dream. Yeah, stage 6. Okay. So we'll now read. Freedom from limitation, the knowledge I am the self, negates the doer enjoyer. That's the basis of it. And seeker stops because he understands the fullness that he or she is. So there's no more seeking is going to add onto me. Why do we seek? We see because we have an expectation. What is the expectation supposed to do? To make me more happy, add status onto me, make my life better. But I'm already full, thus seeking is not going to help. Therefore, seeking stops. And removes the need to worry, which comes from the identification with the jiva. Okay, what does it say here? This stage is total destruction. Oh, put it down. This stage is total destruction or disidentification from jiva. From the idea that I am the subtle body. No need to pander to the jiva anymore or to its needs. One turns over actions and responsibilities to Ishvara, because Ishvara has always been running the show in the first place. Knowing creation has nothing to do with me. There's no two of you. You're either the self or the doer. You understand so far? You're either the self. There's no 99% self, 1% doer. That's stage 5. At this stage, one had done all the work there is to do. In other words, you can be the president, you can start Apple, Microsoft, Google, all the companies together, and still that is not, it doesn't even come close to the purpose that you're actually here for, which is to realize the self. That's what we mean by there's nothing else to do. There's nothing else one needs to accomplish. But it doesn't mean you can't still do. Important point. Suppose now you say, I'm free, but I want that cake. But I can't have that cake, because if I have that cake, that means I'm pandering to the jiva. Are you free?
No.
You're limited by what? By the needs of the jiva. You see how it's not a black or white thing. You can still have full knowledge, but there's still an unconscious program running. If it needs to be satisfied, do so. Which person wants to suffer? In other words, jnani, we don't look at jnanis like this. We often think jnanis are so free, they just don't need anything. But look at reality. The reality is there's still an unconscious program operating. And that program wants to satisfy the body, mind, intellect. So you can still satisfy it if you want to, but you don't have to. Is that clear? Mm-hmm. So it's not that black or white. It's a dynamic. Because if suppose, for example, there's a strong abandonment issue as a child, and the person realizes their self completely, stage 6, and because they feel lonely, then they say, oh no, now if I get the fact that I want a relationship means that I'm not free. So I'm not going to give a relationship or have a relationship. That's limitation. That's limitation. So what? It doesn't really matter. Enjoy it. That's the whole point of moksha. What do you do after moksha? You either teach, that's the only other choice, or 2, enjoy knowing that this is all one. That's the only 2 choices. The Shastra says so. In other words, the person still can get married if they want. They can still have a partner if they want. They can still enjoy food. They can still drive fast cars. They can still do whatever they want. Why? Because it doesn't really matter. You're just enjoying. Now, I know what you can say, but who's enjoying? It's not that black or white. Is that clear so far? Otherwise, we're going to have these strict rules. If I pander, I'm not enlightened. It doesn't work like that.
I see this. If you're taken on a body, obviously the sense organs have to work.
Yeah.
So the enjoyment is right. Not there's a what do you call the limitation to the enjoyment too.
Yeah.
Like the thoughts to the enjoyment and all this stuff. That's where we go wrong sometimes.
Yeah.
Like simplified enjoyment, like you need food for your stomach, you need
here and there, small enjoyments here and there, because that's what makes up life.
It's our attachment to our enjoyment, that's the problem.
Yeah.
That you can't do without it. But if you can enjoy it, there's nothing wrong with it.
Well, it's like you can enjoy everything.
Yeah, it's like
You've just got to apply the Dharma and the
to
Swadharma to what it is that's going on.
Crave for it.
Yeah.
Then.
Yeah. Also, good point you brought about attachment. Yeah. See, also attachment, it doesn't now mean because there's attachments left that you're not at stage 6. Attachments belong to who?
The body.
Lifetimes and lifetimes of vasanas are going to keep projecting their attachments. So don't now have these unrealistic expectations. I'm supposed to be free of all attachments in the world. It doesn't matter. Why? Because you realize this is a different order of reality. Mithya has nothing to do with Satyam. The dream world, whatever happens in the dream world, has zero to do with the waker. It's a totally different order of reality. Is it 100% clear on that? Okay, I will do one more and then we'll take a break. Now, there's something after stage 6, and it's not a big deal, but it's worth mentioning. Because, and we're talking about this actually now in chapter 6 of the Gita, which is why I say nididhyasanam. Remember the patterns that are falling, from the vasanas, and they're constantly making the person do or have these needs, have these certain coverings. The mind still is not 100% pure. There's still love issues from childhood. There is still certain, it basically goes to love issues that make all the problems in different ways. And they prevent the enjoyment of what it means to say, I am the whole. See, if you say, I am the whole, I am full, I am complete, and nothing can add on to me or subtract from me, that is one thing to say it. But the depth of that statement, the infinite depth of that statement, depends on how much you do nididhyasanam, which is what leads to stage 7. So what we're saying is, you can stop at stage 6. There's no problem stopping at stage 6. But because you love yourself, not only as yourself as the world, but also yourself as the body, why not continue meditating and appreciating the depth of what it means to say, I am full, whole, and complete. In other words, all stage 7, and I like how stage 7 is placed after stage 6, see how down to earth it is? You don't say, I'm now enlightened, this is it, I can now, don't need to do anything. No, still a person is operating. So what? The person is still going to do all they can to meditate the full depth, the full meaning of what it means to say, I am free. And then they're going to also do things like a little bit of, mind cleaning, mind purification, whatever those techniques involve. Why not? Right? Because you don't want a liberated, unhappy person. That's very confusing actually. Suppose you meet someone and they really are very sharp, they know what they're talking about, but they generally don't exude cheerfulness. And you're like, man, it's confusing, right? They're free, they've done the highest there is to do, but I just don't feel, there's an odd feeling about them. They're just generally like, not willing to communicate, right? Kind of not addressing everyone. And it's kind of discouraging. So you want a good role model. And so, where does that come from? It's a motivation for what? You see how you're not thinking for your own needs? To be a good role model for everyone. In other words, it's a selfless action in stage 7, so that the knowledge in stage 6 can flower and be fully inspiring to all those who come in contact with you. That's called nididhyasanam. Let's see what this says, and I'll take. Okay. Now, total fulfillment. There is only me. Also, there is only me was also in stage 6, but also here it's stage 6 was also a little bit of interruptions from vasanas. So yes, there is only me, but there is some bothering in the background because of the unconscious patterns. So she realizes that he or she accomplished everything that needs to be accomplished, which is also stage 6. And is completely satisfied. Those two words are a good indicator for stage 7. Totally, utterly, absolutely satisfied with their weaknesses, with their strengths, with the characteristics that others say should be improved. They're satisfied with their mom, dad, sister. They're satisfied with all of the parts that you would otherwise not be satisfied with. Whatever that is about you as a person, you're satisfied about that. That means in the emotional aspect, satisfied, temperament aspect, satisfied, physical aspect, satisfied. In other words, so satisfied that you just you are resting in yourself. You're so comfortable that there is nothing to do. There is just nothing. You're just totally comfortable in yourself. Okay.
But do you still see that side of you?
Huh?
Do you still see that side of you in that stage?
What side?
All this side of all the weaknesses and everything else. Do you identify them as weaknesses, or they just are?
Because weaknesses are only a point of view from the aspect of the mind. Because see, if I'm identified with my mind, then the mind carries ideas what a weakness means. But if I disassociate from the mind, then the mind's looking at the weaknesses, but I'm not looking at the weaknesses. So I've cut out the middleman. I've cut out the linker, and the linker was my identification. So this is also a good point you brought up. Weaknesses means stage 5. Okay? There is no such thing as weakness. It's a very good point you brought up. Because to say I have weaknesses means that the mind still has preferences or ideas what it is supposed to be like until I can qualify as no weaknesses. In other words, it's still an operating principle called mind and intellect that is dictating what it means to be strong and what it means to be weak. And I'm identified with that, therefore I say weakness.
But surely it's just living in awareness of watching yourself, whatever you're doing. Whether you've got a plate full of donuts covered in sugar and jam and you're just drawn to that, or whether you've got some steamed vegetables which are organically grown. There's a sort of, you've got to do what in your knowledge is the best thing to do for your circumstances. Isn't that what it is?
You won't do that.
Because you know in your knowledge that if you just don't care, you just go for the donuts because you like the taste of donuts. You know that you're actually not going to be doing
down to earth. Nothing changes. Down to earth. Nothing changes. Everything's, the preferences are still the same. You're just not identified with those preferences.
I have one thing to share. We talk about doing a pranayama and to just surrender to God in all our actions and not worry. Sometimes, wouldn't you think that sometimes thoughts, Ishvara sends thoughts to your mind because he wants you to perform certain things?
Yeah, very much.
So how do you, how can you recognize those things? If a thought, what is the subtle difference to identify that?
Yeah, very easy. You just gladly want to do it, and you cannot imagine not doing it. It just totally makes sense to do it. You want to do it, and there's no agenda whether you fail or not at it.
And there's no fruit of action either.
Yeah, there's no results or expectations of the palam, the karma palam. It's like, it's so obvious, I need to do it. It's kind of like very easy. Suppose there's a child and you're a mother of a child, and the child is hungry. And the child is asking for food. Is there any agenda for feeding the child?
No.
You're helplessly doing it. You want to do it. But it's not even I want to do it. You're just doing it. Right? It just only makes sense. It's the next logical step. Okay, break and then we'll continue. Okay, have we all heard about reflected awareness teaching? I'm going to revise this for you, and we're just going to show you a model quickly. I stole this from the bathroom. I'll catch the thief later and make sure he returns. Okay. So this mirror is called a pure mirror, a pure reflecting mirror. Why is a mirror called a pure reflecting mirror? Because that's what a mirror does. It is so pure that it's able to reflect whatever you put it. So why am I now pointing this? Because we're going to now change the topic. We've gone through the 7 stages. Okay, we're finished. I'm now going to change the topic and go into creation. How creation starts and what are the steps of creation. Because we haven't covered this topic at all. And I need to first show you a few introductory ideas. So imagine this mirror is what we call Ishvara. Okay, so the mirror is Ishvara. So when you look at yourself into the mirror, what do you see? You see yourself But you also now, along amongst yourself that you see, what do you also see? Whatever the mind that is looking is also seeing. So if the mind that is looking at the mirror has ideas about itself, about its body, that it's not pretty, for example, then not only is it going to see itself, but it's also going to see this projection stemming out of where? The mind. So in other words, there's two concepts that we just established. The first one is you're seeing yourself, that means the awareness is looking at itself, but because awareness, so suppose you're all Mrs. and Mr. awarenesses now, and because you're all looking onto this pure reflector, because that awareness is looking through your mind, then if I draw, for example, an emotion, and we call it a happy emotion, go. So when you look at this pure mirror, you're still seeing the mirror, are you not? But you're also seeing what? You're also seeing the content of the mind, which is an emotion called happiness. So this happiness emotion is overlaid over what we call the reflecting medium, which is your subtle body. Why do we say overlaid? Because everything that you experience is where? It's in your mind. And what is the mind? Your manas, your buddhi, your ahamkara, and your chitta, your memory. So whatever comes out of, for example, the memory is going to show a content of that memory, and that content is going to display itself, and who is looking at that content? You are. So not only are you looking at yourself, but you're also looking at the contents of your mind constantly. So when we say reflected awareness, what we're saying is pure reflecting mirror, which is equivalent to Ishvara. So what do I mean by pure reflecting mirror? That principle which allows original consciousness to shine, and when it reflects, it knows itself as the individual components which are overlaid over the pure mirror. Is that clear? So if I have a component of a jiva's subtle body, and in the subtle body we have an emotion, then that's overlaid over this pure mirror, and original awareness, like the sun is shining, then it's going to reflect back what? Itself plus whatever it is it's shining on. So now the person says, I am, this I am that is said is what? Original consciousness, and then whatever follows the I am is going to be this. I am, draw a happy or a sad face, I am that.
So when you identify with your BMI, when you're looking in the mirror, that's what you're seeing.
You're always looking
as opposed to identifying yourself as pure consciousness.
Yeah.
So if you were thinking pure thoughts as part of pure consciousness, that's what you're going to see when you look in the mirror. Is that correct?
That's it. So, exactly. So this is why we say Nityasanam in Vedanta is just placing thoughts that represent the nature of the one that is shining. So the one that is shining, for example, is bright, illuminous, always full, always complete. So if I convert the descriptions of who you are into words, then what's going to happen is you're going to know yourself as who you are through the aspect of creation. You understand that? So for example, suppose that I have a whole bunch of false notions on this, suppose this is a subtle body, this is your mind. This blank, transparent piece is your mind. And I have notions like, God is ... I am this, and this. Okay? So these notions belong to the mind, of course. They don't belong to the sun, or to you, that's shining on. And so the sun, or the original awareness, is going to reflect back onto itself and say, God is, I am this and this and this. But these ideas are only false notions. They do not correlate with the original illuminating source, which is who you are, which is pure and free of any attributes. So if we replace this with I am that, or I am this, or there is only one here, there is only me here, there's only Brahman, then that is the truth. In other words, your experience is going to change because you're reflecting, what's being reflected back to you is the description which in words describes who you are. And therefore, your experience will be in alignment with what is. So what does it mean to say what is? It means that the notions are in alignment with reality. Okay? So this means that the original source that was shining on was never touched in the first place. Whether this had false notions or true notions, the self, you, was never affected in the first place. But because it is always shining, and it was always reflecting false notions, it could not know what it is. It thought it was something else other than the illuminating principle. It thought it was other than awareness. So what Vedanta does, it just tells you, writes a whole bunch of ideas here that correlate with the description of who you are, and then what's reflecting back is who you are. Clear? Okay, we're going to delve one step deeper into this. So here we have reflecting medium. So we call it a subtle body reflecting medium. Why is it reflecting medium? Because if you just have a pure reflection, then that's all it's doing, it's just reflecting. But you need to put something onto it to reflect an object. So this object, in this case, would be, for example, the jiva's subtle body, your mind. And it doesn't stop there. Because now, suppose you have a blank mind, right? There's nothing in your mind. What's still being reflected back? Original consciousness plus a blank mind. So now if I add an emotion onto the mind that was blank, I have now what? Original consciousness plus, or and, not plus, original consciousness and subtle body or reflecting medium and the emotion or thought inside the reflecting medium. And that's what the awareness picks up. Whatever contents are present here in the reflecting medium, yeah?
Can there be a time when there's no creation and you're shining on nothing, so you don't know who you are because there's nothing to shine on?
Yeah, okay, you're already one step ahead. Because I'm going to jump into creation process.
Sorry.
I'm going to tell you what before creation. Ask that question again. Is there a time? Yeah, okay. Is there a time when the dreamer was not dreaming? Of course. Because how do you know you're dreaming unless you have a reference point to the waker? See, you can only say you're dreaming if you have woken up. If you're stuck in a dream and you say, how can a dreamer know about the waker? Impossible. You only know about the dreamer, that is the creation, as you say, the world, from the reference point of the waking, from seeing what is. That does not answer the question. Ask the question again. Was there ever a time?
Is there ever a time where there is no creation and you're just shining? You as consciousness are just shining, but there's nothing reflected back because there's no creation.
Okay. Is there a dream? When the dream's going on, is there a dream?
No.
When the dream's going on, is there a dream?
No.
Yes.
No, you're experiencing, you're experiencing the dream state. You're not experiencing...
Is there a dream from the standpoint of the waker?
Yes.
There is a...
Yeah.
No, the waker is free of the dream. There's only a dream from the standpoint of the dreamer. From the standpoint of the waker, there is no dream. The dream is only a power in the waker and it has nothing to do with the waker.
Okay.
See, you're only asking that question from the basis of taking this creation to be real. And that's why I was saying, was there ever a time when there was no creation? There is no creation.
What if
There's only creation from the standpoint of thinking this is creation. But what is the entire dream pervaded by? The waker. And the waker is thus free of the dreamer. Therefore, there is no creation.
Yeah.
What? if ever in your stage of life, if you ever looked in a mirror and see nothing in the mirror, not even the reflection of your...
You're a ghost.
No, hold on. What happens then? What is it?
Well, that's what I'm asking, isn't it?
No.
What happens now if you're looking into
If you're looking into the mirror and
Yeah.
there's nothing, no object, no, not your
Yeah.
face, nothing.
Yeah, okay, but the mirror is still known to you, so it makes no difference to you. Because what's the mirror going to do? See, you still have to be present. You still have to exist to know about the object, because the object is dependent on the reflecting medium and the pure mirror. So the mirror has nothing to do with you. The mirror is just a tool which makes the world possible, a power which makes the world possible. You're also free of the mirror.
So that means you're free of the mirror.
You're free of the
If
mirror.
you're not seeing an object there.
The mirror is just a potential power called Maya. And when Maya appears, it's able to reflect whatever appears in Maya. But you're free of the Maya, because all Maya really means is what you're experiencing right now, the world, apparent world.
Which is just a reflection anyway.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to ask this question. We're going to get into this, and see, it's already getting to a good topic here. Because we need to clear something up about thinking that you are in creation. Okay. Here we're going to say, number one, Panchadashi. We're going to say here, there is only consciousness. Okay, agree so far? Now it's going to say all objects are located in consciousness. Is that true?
All objects.
Well, different orders of reality, though.
Okay, what is consciousness?
Awareness.
Awareness. Now it says here because see, so far through this entire year, I've been saying one thing: everything is in you. And it says here also, all objects are located in consciousness.
That's right.
But what if I say now, nothing is in you? Okay, I'm going to explain. I'm going to ask you a question.
Yes and no
All
question.
is in consciousness, but
Nothing is in consciousness.
You can
Consciousness is
say even
completely
nothing.
free of everything.
consciousness is in you, but you are not in consciousness.
No, you are consciousness. It says here, all objects are in me. But now I'm going to say,
It's,
nothing is in you. Okay, explain. All objects are located in consciousness. Nothing is in consciousness. So how do we explain? Tell me this. Right now, is there air in space?
yes. Air in space, yes.
Okay.
If not, we won't be breathing. Otherwise we'll be all
Okay,
dead.
common sense question.
On-
Is
on
there air in
Earth
space?
on Earth
outer
is
space, no. Space.
Oh,
On
Okay.
Earth
air
there
in
is-
space.
Okay, so is there air in space
No.
from the reference point of the Earth's atmosphere?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Is there vacuum in space from the Earth, from the point of view of the Earth's atmosphere?
Yes.
No, air. No, vacuum is no air.
Yeah.
But there is gravity.
Not unless you create it separately, but no, there isn't.
We don't know if there's air, there's space.
Okay, I'm just going to put it this way. Is there air in space right now?
Yes.
Yes.
Now, if I ask you the same question on the moon, is there air in space?
There would be no.
No.
No, as
But
far as
then
we
if-
don't know.
Okay, some planet doesn't have any air. Okay, but outer space. What if I ask you on the moon, is there vacuum in the space?
Yeah.
What's your answer?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. If I asked you, is there vacuum on Earth, right here that we're breathing?
No.
If there was vacuum, you'd be dead. Okay, so there's no vacuum here. So which one is true? Is air in space or is vacuum in space? Which one's true?
What?
Depends
where you
on the
put it
mithya
and-
point of view from which you're looking at it. In other words, space is free of both.
But without space, neither could exist.
Neither could exist. Space was never having the air. Why? Because as soon as I go out of the reference point of the Earth, then that answer that
Becomes
there's
different.
air in space no longer applies. Clear? As soon as I go on if I go onto the moon and I ask you, is there air? You say no, and I say, well, which one is it? Is there air in space or is there vacuum in space? It depends where you're at. Another example would be like this. Suppose that going back to the snake example, and we'll change the example a little bit. Suppose you've got a dimmer on your bedroom, and your spouse pranks you, and they put a belt right on the ground, and the belt looks like a snake. Okay, and then you walk in, and you think it's a snake. Is your response genuine?
Yes.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Because of what you think is.
What do you see? You see a snake. Is it really a snake?
No.
No.
Okay. Okay, now go back to the rope and snake because, just change the example. So, you get the principle. Rope, I see the snake on top of the rope. So, the snake depends on the rope. Because without the rope's existence, there is no snake.
Mm.
Can I now say that there is a rope in the snake?
No.
Why not?
Because if you can see the rope, then you're not seeing the snake.
They have nothing to do with each other. I'm not seeing a rope, therefore the rope is totally not in the order of reality that I'm observing this object called a snake. In other words, the object that I see, whether it's a stick, whether it's a snake, whatever it is, the idea of a rope is virtually non-existent. In other words, there is no rope in the snake. Then why do I see the snake?
Because of your
It's
previous
superimposed.
Reflection.
Because of my error, avidya, of my ignorance. So in other words, the rope, being Brahman, consciousness, is free of creation. Object is creation. It says here all objects are located in consciousness. True, you know that, because without space you cannot host objects. But at the same time, you need to understand what it means to say you are free of every object. There is no creation in consciousness. Just like there is no snake. But I see a snake, why? Because of my own error. So we see the world, why? Because of my own error. What is moksha? The world is not a world. It is just consciousness. It is just a rope. This is what I mean when I say there is no creation in consciousness. Creation only is true from the standpoint of the snake. But the snake is an error because of what? My avidya. If I remove avidya, how can I say there's a world when the snake actually depends on what it's actually superimposed on, that is the snake, that is the rope?
So,
But there is something, there's still a rope,
There's still a snake, you mean?
there's still a snake.
There's a limitation
No,
to the
there's
example, right? Because there actually isn't a rope. It's not a rope and a snake are both physical objects.
Yeah,
right?
the world doesn't disappear in this example.
Yeah.
The world, but it's as good as the snake disappearing because the knowledge is so firmly established. Okay, is that clear?
And what about
So-
if there was a real snake?
Huh?
then you lift it up to see whether it's a real snake.
You thought it was a rope.
Hold it as a rope.
So we as collective mass, what you call, like we see collectively, our projection in this world, all these
Vyavahārika,
wars
yeah.
that are going on.
Yeah,
So how does, I mean, like, is that
yeah.
Yeah,
that's a Vyavahārika reality. Totally.
superimposed from our mind? The war that's going on?
No, that's not from your mind. That is called the Vyavahārika reality, which is a collective. All of the karmas of all individuals of all lifetimes create what we have today called creation. So all the vasanas, for example, suppose you have a community that thinks really divine thoughts. What kind of a community is it? A divine community.
Peaceful, beautiful, happiness.
Exactly. In other words, the creation is a result of the totality of the individuals that make it up. In the same way, this creation that we're experiencing is a totality of the collective lokas, the collective individuals in this loka, in this realm that we're experiencing now. In other words, and the community is what? Part of a bigger community. So all communities make up the whole. So in other words, this universe is just a collection of the total vasanas of every single jiva in the entire universe.
But isn't everything that you're saying right now kind of like seeing the snake in the rock?
Yeah.
From a standpoint of creation, yeah. That's the only way to explain it.
We could see the bigger picture. I think from what you're saying, the bigger picture could be that the war has to happen for all this negative, whatever to, what do you call
Yeah, it doesn't matter because it's just a continuation.
Playing the stage, in a way. Everything has to go away and replaced and whatnot. Maybe that's the bigger picture. The good and the bad.
Just like your dream. Your dream, you don't control the contents in your dream. They just happen according to their own. I know what you're going to say. The dreams come from your memory. That's true. But the dreams come from whose memory? Your memory. Just one person's memory. But what is the collective dream? The contents of every single memory, you could say, of all of the jivas. So what we're experiencing now is really just a collective unity of every single mind, individual minds, which make up the one big singular mind. That's why we say there's only one mind here. Okay, we'll get into the text deeper and then this is going to become much more clear because I'm just introducing some ideas. Okay, text. Inquiry into existence. Panchadashi. Selected verses. Okay, Panchadashi is a simple yet comprehensive manual of Advaita Vedanta written in the 14th century by Swami Vidyaranya. And we're now getting into that. So just so you know the source of this. What is the self? We're talking about Atman right now. Subject, so we're going to get into a subject-object analysis. The self is limitless consciousness. In other words, Atman, the truth of Atman is limitless consciousness. Are we clear on that so far? Okay. There is only consciousness. Okay, stop. There is only, can I say right now, there is only this pen?
No.
Because there's a lot more in this pen. But can I say, so that means as soon as I go out of the cognition of this object, this statement no longer applies. Can I say right now there is air? Yes. We already established, if I go out of space, right now, is there air? No. But is there space here? Yes. Is there space in outer space?
Yes.
So, what we can all come to agree is there is only space. Why? Because if there wasn't space, there's nothing to say. There's no way to be accommodated to make such a statement. So, there is only consciousness. That which accommodates and pervades in and through everything, including space. Why do I compare space to consciousness? Because it is the closest gross element that we have to compare to consciousness. So don't ever compare consciousness equals space. Yeah, even Shankaracharya says space is the closest.
Is it because we don't know where the beginning and the ending of space?
That's also another good one because space has no beginning and an end. Even air has a gradual reduction as you get out of the atmosphere. But space never reduces, and you cannot put an edge onto space over here or there. Or even if I have the space inside this cup, it surely seems like the space inside this cup is different than the space outside the cup. But that's only the reference point of what? From inside the cup, it seems like it's other than the space from outside the cup. But if I remove the walls, if I break this down, then what? The space that was outside is exactly the space that's inside. So, that's what I mean. There is only consciousness. That consciousness because of which, in whose presence this entire world is supported by. In other words, consciousness is the supportless supporter. Nothing supports consciousness in order to support us. The final, which you cannot go any further, is awareness, self-existence / Brahman / consciousness / Paramatma. Okay.
So if you put a lid on a cup and move the space
and pour it out somewhere else.
Good idea.
Put some strawberry flavouring in the space.
Put a lid on you.
self, yeah.
Can we come back to where we started from? All objects are located in consciousness,
Yeah.
and then you said the other things that they are not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how, when consciousness is the one because of which the object exists and it's pervaded by it,
Yeah.
then how can you negate it?
Because if you put something in consciousness, that means I'm adding attributes to consciousness. And if consciousness had an attribute to that which I added onto, for example, blue, if I say color blue is in consciousness, since consciousness is the substratum of the entire universe, suddenly everything in the universe will become blue.
Yeah.
So consciousness has to be free of the attributes which are, of the appearances or the attributes which are being shown. The waker has to be free of the dream in order to know about the dream upon the waking.
But if you see blue, it's in consciousness.
But then isn't everything in consciousness? It is supported by consciousness.
Yeah,
It's
because
like difference in
if you weren't
space.
aware, it couldn't exist.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying you need to know both sides. You see, if I just say one side, everything is in and we just stop there. See, that's still Dvaita. What about the other one? You have to understand what it means to say nothing is in consciousness. So I'm not saying one is right and one's wrong. You just have to know both from both aspects. This is what it means to understand the entire vision.
But can we rephrase it that everything is in consciousness, but consciousness is not affected by it?
Yeah, you can say it like this. The web of the spider, for example, depends on the spider, definitely. So the web is in the spider, but the spider is not in the web.
Yes.
Okay, that we agree. So it says right here, all objects, that is the web, is located in the spider. And out of the spider, i.e. Brahman, comes the entire creation. And that spider's web is Maya, the power which creates and gives birth. Now what does a spider do? Just enjoys how all these flies get caught, and do their business. It doesn't touch the spider at all. So this means whatever happens in the web, the Maya, the created world, does not affect the spider. So is actually everything in the spider? Yes and no? You have to understand both sides. Yes or no? Okay, one more time. Suppose, for example,
So everything is created by Brahman, but
Brahman is not affected by it.
okay, can you
understand?
can you say right now? Can you say right now that this creation, is inside the clay?
No.
Oh, revelation. All objects are located in consciousness. We have understood that. Everything is in space. Everything is in consciousness indeed. Understood. But if you look at it from this angle, can I say that this creation is inside the very substance because of which this creation is possible? Because from the aspect of clay, there is no creation. There is only clay. Where is creation here? I can only say creation when there's a subject-object duality, and then by that I call creation. But if I understand that this object is what? Clay, and I'm also clay, looking through clay eyes, and the space is also clay, then can I say there is creation?
No.
No, because there is only clay. Is there pot? Yes. Why? Because you perceive it through your cognition, which is what a jiva's purpose is, to perceive things and then to be conscious of that which it perceives. But from the other angle, is there creation? Considering, can the form of pot say there is creation? No. You have to be apart from form to say there is creation, and then to say objects are in consciousness. But if you are that, if you understand yourself to be already in that already, then the whole thing about objects in consciousness does not make sense at all. This is what it means, all is one. As soon as I say things are in consciousness, it means what? Object, subject, duality. So what do we have to do? We have to negate that and understand that you cannot say that, because to say that means there is still a subject that is considering an object other than the subject. But both the subject and the object are of the same clay. So there is no creation. Is that clear?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I go to, like right before I go to sleep, I remember a dream that I have, not only do I remember the dream, but I remember that I would be dreaming that for most of my life. So it's...
Oh yeah.
But before I remembered that, I had no idea of its existence. And then as soon as I became aware of it, I'm like, oh my God, I've been dreaming this for years, and I had no... Like, I just had no awareness of it until, you know, you're kind of in the dream state and awake state, so you can access it. And I just want to know your thoughts on that, because it's kind of like awareness in existence.
So you realized it was there all along when you realized it was there all along. But before you realized, even though it was there all along, you did not realize that.
Exactly.
Like a recurring dream.
Yeah, it's just like a...
Maybe it wasn't...
Yeah, you know, sometimes it's a blind spot. It's the same thing with... It's kind of like having... Have you ever had this experience? You're writing, you put your pen here, and you somehow know it's there.
Yeah.
But you only know it was there all along when somebody tells you, hey, it's on your ear. Then you realize, oh, I knew there was some feeling. There was some feeling of something on my ear. But you only realize that once you have been awared by what is obvious. Before, even though it was true, because nobody pointed it out, then even though it was in my awareness, I dismissed it.
Yeah.
So it's a common thing. In other words, the more we're aware, the more we dissolve that which was there all along. In other words, creation is there all along until creation is no longer there. See, this is a creation, right? You know it's there. Right? You know it's there, but you don't know it's there. You think it's there. Until someone points it out. Well, you don't think it's there because you don't know it's there. And then someone points it out, and then you go, it was there all along. In the same way, when we have creation, we think there's a creation, but we actually know there is no creation. There is only self. Until someone points it out, and you assimilate the knowledge, and then you say, wow, there was never creation in the first place.
It's like that trick we used to play on people. You get a coin, and you stick it, you just push it hard onto your forehead, yourself, and then you knock yourself on the back of the head, and it falls into your hand. And you say to the other person, can you do that? And you get the coin and you put it hard onto their head. Yeah. But when you take your finger away, you actually take the coin away. And then they go, and there's nothing there, but they can still feel. They're convinced that it's there. And they know it's there. And they just go, that's cool. You haven't done that once? No, it's actually...
You shouldn't have told us.
Yeah, it's a great trick. Next time you see any kids, try it on the road.
It's like driving on the road many times on the same road. Yeah. And yet, until Dave points out that I suddenly see a signboard, suddenly I say, oh wow, that would be a new signboard. He says it's been there all 10 years.
It's such a typical rope snake example. We're constantly seeing these things, right? But then you realize it was not what I thought it was. And then when you're really aware of that, that's what the teaching does, then it no longer has any power. It's kind of like this. See, mine is like a trickster, right? Have you ever watched a magic trick? And then, they fool you very well. No matter how smart you are, and you're like, wow, this is a real magic, right? Now, if you're one of those like me, the first thing I do is I go, how to pull off this trick. I want to know how they did it. And as soon as you discover how that trick is done, it loses all power. It no longer fascinates you. It is no longer a trick. In the same way, once the knowledge is assimilated, what used to trick me as something that I need to understand, once you understand, then there is nothing else to understand. There's nothing else to know, because everything is pervaded by the one same self.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti